this. We take no pleasure in bringing in these measures. They are unprecedented and done for the right reasons. The vast majority of Canadians are respectful workers who abide by the law. For 2 years, we've been living with the pandemic, and we are all fed up. When we have come through this crisis, we must work together for the well-being of our entire country. But at this time, our economy and our democracy are facing a serious threat brought about by foreign agents. We cannot allow this siege and these barricades to replace our democratically elected government. The transition to a greener economy will take several years, but we will make it. In the meantime, our natural resources will still be needed right across the world. When the Prime Minister announced to Canadians that our government was going to invoke the Emergencies Act, he also assured them that Parliament would have the final word about our proposals. The process began yesterday, the first day of debate on the declaration of the state of emergency in the House of Commons. That is how the Emergency Act works. The House of Commons acts as a watchdog in this process.
My point is that these illegal blockades and occupations have been national in scope and are still hurting Canadians. In places where blockades were cleared, we have already seen attempts to reestablish them. They pose an ongoing threat to our economy and to our security. As we saw in Coutts, Alberta, and other places across the country, some of those involved are alleged to have had much more sinister motives than simply opposing vaccine mandates. C'est pourquoi lundi, nous devions
That's
agir.
why on Monday
Et nous
we
ne
had to
sommes pas les
act.
seuls à croire que
And
la
we are not the only
situation est une
ones who
urgence
believe
nationale.
that this is a
Plusieurs
national
premiers ministres
emergency.
provinciaux
A
sont
number
d'accord.
of provincial
Nous le
premiers
savons
agree.
parce que nous les
We
avons
know that
consultés.
because we consulted
Bien que
them.
nous voyons des
Even
progrès vers
though
la
we
fin
are
de
seeing
l'occupation et des
progress
barricades
towards the
illégales,
end
la
of the illegal
situation continue
blockades and
d'évoluer
the
rapidement.
siege, the
Depuis
situation
que
is
nous avons
evolving
déclaré
quickly.
l'état d'urgence,
Since we
d'autres
declared an
barricades ont
emergency,
été
other
évitées.
blockades have been
Notre but est
erected.
simple.
Our
Restaurer
purpose
l'ordre
is
dans
clear.
nos
We
rues
want to
et à nos
restore law and
frontières
order
pour que les
in our
Canadiens
country
affectés
and on our
puissent
borders so
retrouver
that
leur
affected Canadians can get their
To do
lives
that,
back.
we have given law enforcement the tools they need to finally end these occupations and to make sure that any attempts to re-establish blockades that cost our economy millions of dollars, are thwarted. The official opposition is also talking about rights. We take rights seriously. So did the progressive conservative government that introduced the Emergencies Act and ensured that it was charter compliant. That was the right thing to do. Ne confondons pas
Let's
l'occupation et
not
les barricades
confuse an
illégales avec des
occupation and
manifestations
illegal
légitimes.
barricades with
Les Canadiens
legitimate
savent à quoi
demonstrations.
ressemblent les manifestations.
Canadians know what
Ça
legal
ne ressemble
demonstrations
pas à
are
ce qui se
like.
passe sur la rue
That is
Wellington,
not what is
à ce
happening
que
now
nous
on
avons vu à
Wellington
Coutts
Street
ou à
and what we
Emerson.
saw in Emerson or
Nous
Coutts.
invoquons la loi sur
We
les
are
mesures d'urgence
invoking
de
the
façon
Emergencies Act
limitée et
in a
mesurée
limited and
pour
measured
faire
manner
cesser l'occupation et
to
les
put an
barricades
end
illégales.
to the illegal
Nous
blockades and the
Nous
occupation.
l'invoquons pour ceux qui ne peuvent plus marcher en sécurité dans les rues
We
de notre capitale.
feel for the people who
Nous
can no
l'invoquons
longer
au nom
walk
du
in the
droit
streets
des
of Ottawa.
travailleurs de gagner
We are
leur
doing
vie et
this
des
on behalf
entreprises
of
de
workers
servir
and
leurs
businesses who want to serve their
Our
clients.
goal is to see order restored and for this emergency declaration to be lifted as soon as possible. So with that, I'd like to invite my colleague, Mark Holland, the government House Leader, to say a few words. Mark.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon. Today we were to resume debate for the second day on the use of the Emergencies Act in the House of the Commons to respond to the illegal blockades and the illegal occupation that is occurring outside of this building. On the advice of parliamentary security, in consultation with all of the House leaders and the Speaker, a unanimous decision was made that it was not safe to proceed with the House sitting today. Je veux dire grand
I just
remercie pour
want
la
to
collaboration
extend my
de mon
thanks
homologue dans l'autre
to my
partie.
counterparts in the
C'était une
others and the
situation
other parties for
où,
their
on doit
cooperation.
s'assurer de
This is a
sécurité,
situation
pas
where we
juste
had
des
to
députés,
ensure
mais
the
aussi pour les
safety not
personnes
only
qui
of members
travaillent
of
ici
Parliament,
aux chambres de
but
communes.
also the staff
Et
working here
alors, c'est
on
possible
Parliament
pour
Hill.
nous de travailler ici
We are
virtuellement,
able
mais
to work
malheureusement,
virtually,
on
but
a besoin
unfortunately,
des personnes en personne
we need people here
ici
in
aux chambres de
person
communes qui
at the House
travaillent
of
avec les
Commons
chambres de communes
who work
pour
with the
les
House of
sessions
Commons
parlementaires
for
virtuelles,
parliamentary sessions that are
pour
virtual
fonctionner.
in order for them to
We're
work.
continuing to monitor the situation outside. It is our hope collectively, and I've had the opportunity to speak with all of my counterparts, that we can resume sitting tomorrow. Clearly, we are going to monitor the security situation to ensure that it is safe, not only, again, as I say, for MPs, but for those who work in the House of Commons who make sure that our session can operate. I want to say that this is an incredibly historic and important debate. We will make sure that every member of Parliament who wishes to speak will be afforded that opportunity, and that we will not allow the pause that has occurred to impact the final outcome, which is a fulsome debate to occur with a final vote early next week. Parliament will not be deterred from its work. We will not be placed in any position that will see the nation's business not being dealt with, and we look forward to the resumption of Parliament in the very near future. And now I'm going to turn to my colleague, the Honorable Marco Mendicino. He's the Minister of Public Safety and National Security.
Thanks, Mark, and bon après-midi tout le monde. Good afternoon. I want to thank you for joining us for today's update on the concrete actions that are being taken to end the illegal blockades. I'm pleased to report that following a number of enforcement operations taken by police, all major ports of entry remain open for trade and travel across the country, and this is good. I want to thank the work that is being done by police services at every level, local, provincial, and obviously members of the RCMP for their exemplary work on the ground. I would also stress that while this is a positive development, that the progress that we have made at the borders is not cast in stone. For example, we know that blockaders have made several attempts now to obstruct ports of entry again, including at the Ambassador Bridge in Windsor. However, these efforts have been thwarted thanks again to the work of law enforcement. This morning, I had a very good call with Mayor Drew Dilkens in Windsor, along with the offices of local MPs Kazmierczyk and Massé. I wanted to make sure that they're receiving all of the support that the federal government could offer. I was very alarmed to hear about reports yesterday of Windsor police arresting an individual who had specifically threatened Mayor Dilkens. And it goes without saying that these kinds of examples of violent aggression towards public officials or any Canadian are absolutely unacceptable. And I want to express my solidarity to Mayor Dilkens, who is a friend and a colleague. We're remaining in close contact with local leaders across the country. Here in Ottawa, the past 24 hours has marked an important turning point in the operation. The Ottawa Police Service, with critical support from the RCMP and OPP, have begun taking enforcement actions. Police officers from across the country, including as far away as Vancouver, are assisting in this important action. Arrests are being made, and the operation is ongoing. Yesterday, the members of the RCMP OPP joined the Ottawa Police Service at a joint press briefing, and I expect that they will continue to be briefing on the developments of the operation. But before moving on, I want to note specifically that the interim chief of the Ottawa Police Service, Chief Bell, specifically stressed the importance and the utility of our government's invocation of the Emergencies Act. And here I'm referring to the special authorities, which have been included under the declaration that allow officers to prohibit assembly in so-called no-go zones where there can and has been a significant breach of police. We've seen over the course of the last number of days, members of law enforcement specifically issue warnings that are in consistency with that declaration. We also know that enforcement authorities and other partners are beginning to use some of the financial controls that are intended to choke off any proceeds or currencies which could be used to aid and abet the illegal blockades. As you heard, Deputy Prime Minister Freeland, we remain in close contact to try and support those efforts. And finally, the RCMP are making full use of the delegated authorities to them to ensure that we can commandeer all of the assets, the equipment, and the tools that are necessary to not only maintain the efforts to end the illegal blockades at our borders and within our communities, but equally to prevent future such efforts. And here again, I would simply stress that while we've made progress, The blockades are not ended. There is an ongoing and fluid situation, and the tools that are being used under the Emergencies Act have been of great assistance. I will stress that the powers are being exercised responsibly. They're being exercised in a manner that is proportional to the circumstances, and they're being exercised in a manner that is consistent with the Charter. And as you heard Minister Lametti indicate, there are safeguards there that ensure that Sections 7 and Section 8 under the Charter are being used to inform the ways in which these powers are being put to good use. There will be transparency around this. There will be ongoing debates in the House of Commons. There will be a joint committee that is set up, and of course, a mandatory review. And it is our commitment as a government to be upfront with Canadians so that they can continue to have confidence that this is an important power that has been used sparingly, but in a manner that is judicious and responsible and consistent with the law. And this is why we invoked it. For anyone who continues to remain as part of the illegal blockade, we have a very simple and straightforward message. Leave. Leave now. Enforcement operations are being undertaken, and for your safety, the safety of Canadians, and the safety of those law enforcement officers who are on the ground discharging their responsibilities right now, the best thing that you can do is to leave. I also want to take a moment just to advise those who are watching on social media not to be posting any locations or any other information related to police operations so as to protect everyone's safety, including the integrity of those operations as they are being carried out. Over
the next few days, I intend to continue to discuss these issues with my colleagues at the House of Commons. The Prime Minister, my colleagues, and myself began the debate yesterday, and we will continue to explain to Canadians why the Emergencies Act had to be invoked and the impact that it has on this entire country.
Finally, I want to take a moment to address yesterday's disturbing events near Houston, British Columbia. I'm deeply concerned to hear reports of violent confrontations at the worksite, including the injury of an RCMP officer. My thoughts are with the officer and their family. And I want to make it clear that no matter what your cause or your views are on any subject matter, there is never any justification for violence towards your fellow Canadians. And that obviously includes the members of the RCMP and other members who work in our law enforcement. BC RCMP are investigating, and I will leave further details to them. In sum, law enforcement actions are resulting in significant progress in ending the illegal blockades. The Emergencies Act has been put into effect and is being used responsibly, proportionately, and consistent with the Charter to help keep our borders open, to protect our critical infrastructure, to keep our legislatures and our Parliament open, to keep our economy going, Canadians at work, and above and beyond all, to keep Canadians healthy and safe. And that will continue to be the focus that our government continues to show at this very important time. And with that, I will turn it over to my friend and colleague, Minister Bill Blair. Bill.
Thank you very much, Marco. Bon après-midi, tout le monde. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us. I'd like to thank you for joining us here today, and I will keep my remarks quite short to allow the media to ask the very important questions I know they must have. Since taking the unprecedented and extraordinary step of invoking the Emergency Act on Monday, we have seen significant progress. These measures have encouraged those involved in these illegal blockades on our streets and in our vital international trade corridors to leave. Local police have successfully dismantled illegal blockades at vital points of entry across the country, and they have been able to defend them from further incursions and attempts to disrupt our economy and the lives of Canadians. We've responded to the pleas that we have received from provinces such as Alberta to take necessary action to fill gaps in existing provincial and regional authorities and capabilities. And the Emergencies Act has allowed police to stop people from entering downtown Ottawa to participate in the illegal blockades by establishing a secured area. And it has given the police the necessary authorities to take effective action against those who do not leave the secured area and who are participating in these illegal blockades. The residents of Ottawa who have had to face this invasion for 3 weeks may now begin to breathe a sigh of relief but I know they do so cautiously. Every Canadian has the right to peaceful, lawful protest and assembly. We will always value, protect, and defend this right, but the freedom of expression reaches its limit when it violates the rights of other Canadians. This limit has clearly been reached and exceeded. These attempts to damage Canada's economy, to disrupt our communities, to even overthrow democratic institutions must be answered with unequivocal condemnation and strong action from those who are in a position of power and have the ability to do so. Businesses and residents in downtown Ottawa have faced serious harms, threats, and intimidation. These illegal blockades at our border brought uncertainty and concern to families and workers in southwestern Ontario, Alberta, Manitoba, and in British Columbia. And while our measures are time limited, we are confident that they have provided the tools, resources, and authorities that were necessary to restore peace and safety and bring these illegal activities to an end. We urge all those who are engaged in these illegal activities to take the opportunity to leave peaceably and allow the people of Ottawa to get their lives back. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. I'll now turn it over to the questions the media may have for us.
Thank you very much, Minister Blair. So we'll proceed with the question period. A reminder, it is one question, one follow-up, and I'm told we have until 2 p.m. So if I could ask you to keep your answers short if possible. Alors, on va commencer avec Christian Noël,
Christian Noël, Radio-Canada.
Christian, tu peux y aller.
Oui, merci. J'attendais
Yes,
que la
thank
commande
you.
apparaisse sur mon téléphone pour pouvoir
I was waiting to see it
enlever,
on the screen
pour pouvoir vous parler. Bonjour à
to
tous.
unmute myself. Good afternoon,
Pour
everyone.
justifier l'utilisation
To
des mesures
justify
d'urgence,
the
là, est-ce
use
que
of
vous êtes
emergency
capable de
measures,
m'expliquer en français
can you
quels
explain
outils
in French
sont utilisés
what
en ce
specific
moment dans
tools are being
l'opération
used now
policière?
during the police
Et
operation?
concernant l'aspect
And
financier,
with respect to the
combien de
financial
comptes en
aspect,
banque ont été
how many
gelés,
bank
combien
accounts
d'argent s'est
have been frozen or accounts seized?
Peut-être je peux commencer. Puis
Perhaps
je
I
vais,
could
passer la
begin, and
parole
then I'll
à
turn it
la
over
ministre,
to
Lemetti
Minister
ou,
Lemetti
mes autres collègues
or my other
pour,
colleagues
répondre à votre
to respond to
question,
the other
Christian.
parts of your question.
Concrètement, les
In
outils
concrete terms,
qui présentement
the
étaient
tools
utilisés
currently
par
being
les forces
used
policières sur
by
le terrain,
police forces on the
incluant la
ground
prohibition
include a
d'incendie,
prohibition
sur quelques areas en Ottawa,
to access certain areas in Ottawa, but not only there,
dans des autres places,
in other
pour,
areas as well,
réguler les
in order
mouvements
to
des gens,
regulate the
qui
movement of people
participaient dans les manifestations, dans les blockades illégales.
prevent people from
C'est un
joining the
important
blockade.
outil,
That is an
pour
important
les forces
tool
policières,
for
au
our
moment,
police forces
parce
at
que
this time,
c'est un outil pour clarifier
because
qu'il faut quitter
it makes
et
it clear
sortir maintenant.
that those people
Il y
must
a des
leave
autres
now.
exemples.
There are other
Par
examples
exemple,
as well.
les contrôles
For instance,
pour arrêter l'argent
check
et les autres contributions
other
financières qui
controls
peuvent aider
on financial transactions
le blocade illégal.
that can assist with this illegal blockade. And as the Deputy Prime Minister has said, the authorities are currently using those tools through financial institutions and even the police. And perhaps I could turn it over now
à Monsieur Lemetti pour
to
la
Minister
justification de
Lemetti
l'invocation de la loi de mesures
to
d'urgence.
say more about why the Emergencies Act
Merci
is
Marco,
justified.
merci Christian pour la
Thank you,
question.
Marco, and
Donc,
thank
le
you for the
ministre Mendocino
question.
vient de souligner,
Minister Mendocino
deux
has
outils,
just
c'est-à-dire
pointed out
la-
two tools,
l'identification et
identifying
la fortification des périmètres
and
justement,
strengthening the perimeter
pour aider les forces policières
to
à faire
help
ce qu'ils doivent faire.
police do whatever they have to do,
Et aussi des mesures financières.
and also
je suis
financial
sûr que
measures.
la ministre
And
Freeland
I'm
aura
sure
plus
that
à
Minister
ajouter là-dessus.
Freeland will have
Moi,
more
je
to
vais
say
vous
about
dire,
that.
on a,
What I can say
on
to
a
you
ici,
is
je ne vais
that,
pas parler des
I mean, I'm not going to talk
opérations
about
particulières
the
parce que
specific
c'est,
police operations,
on est en cours de surveiller ce qui se passe. Mais
because we are monitoring what is
la
occurring.
mesure pour
But
commander les
in
camions
terms
remorques
of
et
using tow
les
trucks trucks
les chauffeurs des camions remorques
and
a eu un impact très
forcing
positif. Ça a incentivisé
those
les
operators
personnes.
to
On l'a
remove
déjà
trucks
vu
has had a very
à
positive
travers le
effect.
Canada. Une fois qu'on a eu on avait la loi,
We've seen that. Once the legislation was in place,
les camions de remorque
truckers and
couverts
tow truck
par la
operators
loi,
felt
et
they were
donc,
covered by the
plus,
legislation,
plus acceptants au fait
and
qu'ils allaient
they were
aider
more
la
readily
police,
accepting
parce
the
qu'avant,
idea of helping
ils
the
avaient
police,
démontré
because
des
before
fortes
that they
réticences.
had shown a
Et
great deal of
les
reluctance to do that.
propriétaires des camions
Now,
ont
the
reçu,
truck
sont en
owners
train de recevoir
are
des
currently
avertissements
receiving warnings
de leurs assureurs,
from their insurance
ainsi,
companies
des policiers qui
and
vont
from
peut-être
police
perdre
officers
leurs enregistrements et leurs assurances
to
des
the
camions.
effect
Et
that
donc, ça a
they
eu un
may
impact.
lose both
On
their
a déjà
insurance
lu
and their
dans les
truck. And we
journaux
know that
des
that
camionneurs
has
qui ont
had an
dit,
impact.
il
Some
faut que
truckers
j'aille parce que
have
mon
said, I have to
employeur m'a
leave
dit
now
de
because my
revenir.
employer has
Donc,
told me to go back
ou à cause de ces assurances.
because
Donc,
of the insurance
c'est
issue.
en train de fonctionner. On a
So
donné
the
des
system is
outils
working.
à
We
nos
have
forces
given our
policières. Ils sont
police
en train de
forces
les
tools.
employer
They are
et
using
l'impact
those
est très
tools,
positif.
and the impact is
Donc,
very
je vais
positive.
passer la parole
So I'll turn it over
à mes
now
collègues s'ils voudraient en
to
ajouter.
my colleagues if they wish to add
Je peux
something.
ajouter
I could just add
un
this.
peu. Oui.
Yes? Okay.
Alors, Christian, merci pour la question.
Thank you for the question, Christian.
Les outils, les mesures financières
The financial
qui
tools
étaient permis par les mesures d'urgence
that were made available through the
ont un
Emergencies
effet.
Act
Ils
are
sont
having
mis en
an
œuvre.
effect.
Et
They
comme le
are
ministre
underway,
Lametti a juste
and
dit,
as Mr. Lametti has just said,
c'est évident
it is
qu'ils
now
sont
clear
importants et
that they
efficaces.
are not
Et
only
je
important
peux
but effective.
vous assurer
And I can assure you
l'argent, les comptes sont maintenant gérés.
that money
Et
in
comme
those
le
accounts
ministre,
has now been frozen.
Lametti a juste
And
dit
as Minister Lametti just added,
on a noté, les compagnies ont notifié les camionneurs
the
que
companies have
l'assurance
notified
peut
their
être
truckers
suspendue.
that their
Alors, les
insurance
mesures
could be
fonctionnent.
suspended. So these
Ils ont
measures
un
are
effet.
working, and they're having
Concernant
an important
les
impact.
détails des
In terms
du
of
nombre,
the
des comptes qui
number
sont
of
gérés,
accounts that have been
les
frozen,
forces policières nous
the
avons demandé de
police
ne
forces
pas
have asked
parler
us not
jusqu'à ce
to
moment,
reveal
et
that
je pense
information
que
thus far,
vous pouvez comprendre
and I'm
qu'on
sure you can
parle
understand
maintenant dans un moment très
that
délicat.
this is a
Ils
very
nous avons
delicate
demandé de
time,
ne
and
pas
therefore they
révéler
asked us
les détails,
to not
mais
reveal the
je pense
details
qu'il
of
y a
that, but
évidemment un intérêt
of course,
public
I think there is
qui est
a public
juste,
interest which
de
is
vous donner
fair
les détails,
in
et on va
receiving
le
that
faire,
information,
le plus,
and we will do that
le plus vite possible.
as soon as possible.
Question de suivi, Christian?
Oui, merci beaucoup. Ma question de suivi touche l'état d'urgence elle-même et le vote qui doit avoir
Yes,
bientôt
I want to
lieu.
ask about the
Si le
vote
vote
that
a
will be
lieu
taking
une fois
place.
que l'Assemblée est
If the
terminée à Ottawa,
vote
j'ai cru entendre dire
takes place
plusieurs ministres qui disent la situation
soon.
c'est fluide, il pourrait y
Well,
avoir
I've
d'autres menaces
heard
à la
ministers
frontière.
saying that
Mais
it's
là,
a fluid
comment
operation.
pouvez-vous
There could be
justifier
further
utiliser
threats at the
un
borders.
mécanisme
So
d'urgence
how can you
pour faire
justify
de la
using an
prévention?
emergency
Et
measure
est-ce
to
que
engage in
vous vous
prevention?
engagez à ne pas
And are you
prolonger la
pledging
loi
not
jusqu'au mois
to
d'avril pendant 60
extend
jours et
the
qu'elle prenne
application
fin
of the
après 30 jours?
legislation until April, for example?
David, est-ce que vous voulez commencer?
David, do you want to
Oui,
begin? Yes.
Et puis je crois pour les aspects parlementaires,
In
je vais
terms of
passer
the
la parole à
parliamentary
Mark Holland,
aspect
mais
of this, I'll turn
je
it
peux vous
over to
assurer,
Mark
Christian,
Holland, but I can
peux
assure
assurer aux
you,
Canadiens qu'on veut
and you
pas
can say to Canadians
prolonger,
that we do not
l'état
intend
d'urgence,
to extend
plus
the
long que
state of
nécessaire.
emergency
On veut-
any more
on
than
a
it
dit
is
clairement
necessary.
qu'on veut
We
même
clearly said
révoquer,
that
l'état
we
d'urgence,
would
même
really
avant les
like
30 jours,
to
s'il est
shorten
possible.
it and have
Le
it over
critère, le
before
seul
30
critère,
days.
c'est la
The
sécurité,
only
des
criterion
Canadiens, des
is the
Canadiennes.
safety
Une
and
fois que
security
la
of Canadians.
situation
And
est
once the
sécuritaire,
situation
on va,
is safe,
enlever l'état d'urgence.
we will remove the emergency status.
Et comme on a souligné à
And
plusieurs
as
reprises,
we've
aussitôt
pointed
que
out a
possible,
couple of
aussitôt que possible.
times,
Je passe
as
la
soon
parole
as
maintenant à
possible.
Mark Holland.
And I'll turn it over to Mark Holland now.
Oui, c'est clair qu'il va y
Yes,
avoir une vote
it's clear
la
that
semaine
there
prochaine,
will
aussitôt que
be a
possible.
vote next
Et
week as soon
il va
as
y avoir
possible.
aussi une débat.
And there will also
Aujourd'hui,
be a
c'était le temps pour
debate.
le 12e jour
Today
de
was
débat.
expected to be the second day of
Mais
debate.
j'espère que on peut
But I do
continuer
hope
avec
that
le
we
débat
will be
demain.
able to continue
Et
the
je suis
debate
certain
tomorrow.
qu'il va y
And
avoir
I'm
beaucoup
certain
de temps
that there will
d'explorer
be
les
a
raisons
lot of
pour
time
lesquelles
to
on a
explore the
besoin
reasons
de loi pour
why we needed this
l'urgence,
legislation
mais
to
aussi
be invoked.
oui, ça c'est la situation actuelle. Et
That's the
on
current
doit
situation, at
vérifier
least, and we
les situations avec la
will
sécurité,
be
mais je
monitoring the
pense que
situation, the
le
security
débat peut
situation. But I
recommencer
do
demain.
believe that the
Et
debate
ça
should
c'est
be able
mon
to start up again tomorrow.
entente maintenant.
And that is my understanding
Si on va
right
passer
now.
à Greg Quinn, Market News International. You can unmute yourself.
Hello. I've heard comments that the protesters must leave because they have been heard. I'm wondering if you can say, after these protests, what will the government do to address the underlying anger that the protesters are representing?
I'm happy to address that. Look, I think that for all Canadians, what we have seen over the past 3 weeks has been deeply disturbing. I think that all of us feel very deeply. This is not how Canada is supposed to work. Our motto is peace, order, and good government, and there has not been a lot of peace and order. And that is why our government has taken these unprecedented actions. And it's the right thing to do. Canadians have the right to peace, order, and good government, and we will restore it, and we are restoring it. I also think it's very important to be clear that government policy is not made by people who block our ports, who harm our economy, who hurt our reputation as a reliable trading partner and a place where you can invest. Nor is government policy made by people who occupy our national capital. That is very clear, and we are firm on that. Now, having said all of that, it's really important, as I said in my opening remarks, for us as a country, once this is over, and it is going to end, to come together and really to heal our country. There are a lot of big challenges in the world today, and it's going to be really important for us to be able to face those challenges as a country. And our government is very, very determined to keep our country together and bring our country together. Ending these illegal occupations and blockades is the essential first step in doing that.
Secondly, I wonder, I heard an Ottawa City Councillor at a council meeting this week call the protesters domestic terrorists. I remember as well, after September 11th, there was a lot of work around critical infrastructure and threats against critical infrastructure, like the bridge at Windsor being perhaps a terrorist offense. Has anything that's been done so far rise to the level of something like that, or is this strictly within the realm of regular criminal offenses?
I'm happy to take that question first and then pass to colleagues having had some extensive experience in prosecuting anti-terrorism act offenses. I understand why people are asking the question. And certainly I would say that colloquially, if you live in Ottawa, there's no question that at times you have felt terrorized. The actions that have been taken by the illegal blockade have been devastating to the local community here in Ottawa. Absolutely devastating. People have not been able to get around, but it's not just an inconvenience or a disturbance. It's worse. It's far worse than that. And That is one of the reasons why the operation that is being put into effect right now, with the assistance of the RCMP, who I want to thank, but equally the other members of police services from around the country, including the OPP, are here to help the Ottawa Police Service restore public safety. There is a big difference about how it is that we talk about the experiences that have been felt by those who live in Ottawa and what actually happens in the court of law and what's proven and what charges are laid and under what category. And I just want to be really clear that those are all decisions which will be taken by police and not elected members of the government, and nor should they be, because that's not the way our democracy works. But I think right now, if you're a person who lives in Ottawa, you just want your community back. If you live in Windsor, you just want to be able to go back to work and not have to worry about illegal blockades interrupting the supply chain, which is so critical to your employment, to your ability to put food on the table and to provide support to your family and your loved ones. As to the precise details of what charges are laid and under what provisions of the criminal code, or whether indeed they may use the Emergencies Act, as officers are now empowered to do where appropriate and where necessary. Those are decisions which will be taken independently by our law enforcement branch, as one would expect that they would be.
Colleagues, I would just add briefly that I would underline, first of all, everything that Minister Mendicino said about the impact on the people of Ottawa. You can't overestimate that intimidation, that disruption, that real profound disruption of sleep and daily life and the economy, as well as for the people of Southwestern Ontario. It can't be overstated. It really can't. That being said, we have a number of criminal code offenses, other municipal offenses and bylaws. We enacted the Emergencies Act to supplement the gaps that we found in listening to police enforcement across Canada and other provinces, other experts. We identified some gaps in terms of enforcement that would help the police. And so we temporarily have an additional set of normative powers that the police can use. Moving forward, as Minister Mendicino said, it's always up to the police to make operational decisions and enforce laws. Are there things that we ought to look at down the road as a result of this crisis? Maybe, and we will do that. I certainly, as Minister of Justice, will look at that quite seriously.
Merci beaucoup. On va passer à Raymond Filion, TVA.
Merci beaucoup. Bonjour à tous. En suivant aux questions de mon collègue Christian, j'aimerais savoir, M. Lametti, qu'est-ce que ça va prendre pour que l'état d'urgence soit levé? En d'autres mots, s'il n'y a plus de barrage au début de la semaine prochaine, lundi ou mardi, pourquoi le recours à la loi serait encore pertinent selon vous?
Merci pour la question. Comme vous avez entendu lors de nos déclarations au début, on a déjà interdit d'autres situations aux frontières de se produire. Et donc, c'est très important pour l'instant. C'est une situation très fluide. Il y a beaucoup de coordination entre les mouvements. Et donc, on est en train de surveiller le tout. Évidemment, nos forces policières, en travaillant avec d'autres autorités au Canada, est en train d'identifier les menaces et travailler contre. Donc, on a encore évidemment la situation à Ottawa. On est vigilant à propos des frontières et d'autres corridors importants, d'autres infrastructures très importantes. On va enlever l'état d'urgence quand on peut et aussitôt que possible, comme je viens de dire. Une fois que la situation est sécurisée et on est sûr qu'on n'a plus besoin des outils identifiés dans la loi sur les mesures d'urgence, on peut enlever l'état. Pour l'instant, on est en train de surveiller, de travailler avec les forces policières, d'identifier les trous et de les laisser la place pour faire leur boulot avec leur indépendance dans leurs opérations.
Merci. Et Mme Freeland, si vous n'êtes pas en mesure de nous dire combien de comptes bancaires ont été gelés, est-ce que vous pouvez nous dire combien d'individus sont affectés par le gel des comptes bancaires?
Euh, non, je ne peux pas donner ces détails. Et je suis vraiment, vraiment désolée. Je suis d'accord qu'il y a un intérêt public à en savoir les détails et on va être transparente aussitôt que possible. J'espère que tout le monde va comprendre que nos policiers sont en train de faire un travail très délicat. Ils ont le contrôle opérationnel et ils ont demandé au gouvernement de ne pas entrer dans les détails. Alors, on doit respecter ça.
Merci beaucoup. On va passer à JP Tasker, CBC News.
Hi, ministers. Thank you. I was going to say happy Friday, but it's probably not that happy a Friday for any of us. Minister Menachino, you said earlier this week you didn't want to see another raucous weekend on Wellington Street like we've seen over the past 3 weekends. With that in mind, is it fair to say that all of the major enforcement actions will be carried out today?
Well, I appreciate the question. I think that those are questions that are going to have to be answered by police who are carrying out those operations in real time. And I think we on the government side have done everything that we possibly can to give police and other partners within the public safety community all of the tools that they need to, first of all, carry out this operation as peacefully as possible. I just want to make clear that no one wants confrontation, no one wants violence, and so far, I think we have seen the police do a remarkably effective job at using the tools that we have given them, including under the Emergencies Act. And the reason why I think we all hope that this operation will be carried out as efficiently and as quickly as possible is because the community here in Ottawa, and I think not just in Ottawa, but right across the country, that people have been exceedingly patient. I do worry at times that over the last number of weeks, people have felt abandoned and helpless and have, at times looked to take matters into their own hands through counter protests and the like. I understand the frustration, but we really do depend on law enforcement to do the job of keeping us all safe, which is what they're doing. And while we've made some progress, in particular here in Ottawa over the course of the last 24 hours, there's still a lot of work to be done. We've spoken before about the complexity of the entrenchment of the blockade in Ottawa at different parts of the communities in neighborhoods, but equally on Wellington Street, where there are still trucks and the like that need to be removed. All we can do in the government side is make sure that the support is there for law enforcement. And the invocation of the Emergencies Act has been an incredibly important tool for them. And specifically in delineating no-go zones and the ability for police to draw upon those authorities to issue clear warnings, to make sure that we're reducing the footprint of the illegal blockade as much as possible before these enforcement operations kicked into high gear was one of the ways in which the Emergencies Act has been put to good use. In addition to that, I would also stress that, as you've heard Deputy Prime Minister Freeland say, the ability to use the Emergencies Act to stop the flow of proceeds and currencies, which could be used to advance the illegal blockade, has been effective. And finally, just through rapid deployment and making sure that RCMP have the local and provincial authorities to uphold public safety has been another measure that has concretely assisted in the enforcement operations which are being carried out here in Ottawa, which is so incredibly necessary. The people here have waited a long time to come to this moment, and we hope that obviously that the operation will be concluded as quickly and as peacefully as possible.
Follow up?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing really extraordinary images play out on our TV screens, I think it's a bit of a shock to all of us who are from Ottawa to see this sort of action. I want to get your reaction to what we're seeing play out and also get your reaction to some of the main organizers being arrested already. We know Chris Barber, Tamara Leach, and just a few minutes ago, Pat King. Some of the convoy bigwigs have also been taken into custody. How satisfied are you to see these folks being rounded up?
Well, I think first we want to express our gratitude to law enforcement for taking those actions. The individuals that you have mentioned have certainly been very prolific on social media, and the charges that are laid will play out in court independently. I would point out again, it is not the job of the government to be laying those charges. To be investigating them, to be accumulating evidence. That's a job for police, and if they make their way to the courts, then obviously a prosecutor and a Crown will take carriage of those cases. And we just on the government side want to see that justice is done. That is our sworn duty as members of Parliament, as ministers of the Crown, and as Canadians. And I think this kind of gets back to what Deputy Prime Minister Freeland was saying about how the country should work. If you break the law, there is a system in place to hold those accountable. And certainly there have been many, many instances where on the face of it, there have been flagrant breaches of the law, causing great harm to Canadians, really upending our way of life, not only at our borders, but in our communities. And we're really relying now on law enforcement to do the job. And I think we're seeing some very encouraging developments on that front. But as to how the charges will play out and what follows, we have an independent judiciary who will make those decisions, adjudications, right from the beginning to the end. And we put our faith in those institutions to do that as well.
If I could just add one thing, is that okay? JP, you used the word satisfaction, and I just want to say this is not a day when any of us takes any satisfaction. For me, this is a day of real sorrow, but also determination. Sorrow because it's painful for me that this is happening in Canada. I think it is painful for a lot of Canadians. I think we see our body politic really being violated by an illegal occupation of our capital, by blockades of our essential trade corridors. So it's really, really sad. But it is also a day of determination, and it is a day when I think everyone in our government is very resolute. A liberal democracy must be prepared to defend itself. And that is what is happening in Canada right now. That is what happened with our invocation of the Emergencies Act. And anyone who seeks to undermine our democratic institutions, who seeks to undermine our national economy, needs to know that we are very firm and very clear about our duty to Canadians to defend our country.
Thank you very much. I'm told we have 10 additional minutes for questions. So if we could keep questions and answers short, we're going to try to squeeze in 2 more reporters. So we're going to go with Jacques Gana, Toronto Star.
Hi, good afternoon. My first question is for Minister Freeland. We learned this week that citizens went. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Sorry about that.
No worries, thanks. Hi, my question is, the first question is for Minister Freeland. We learned this week that citizens went to court in Ottawa to get a court order and succeeded to get a court order to freeze accounts and digital wallets of some of the convoy organizers, leaders. I'm wondering, why didn't the government do that? Why did it fall to citizens having to do that?
Well, first of all, let me say we absolutely welcome citizens using the courts using the Canadian judiciary and the legal system to have their rights defended and upheld. That is a very good thing. In terms of the financial instruments which our government is using right now to act against these illegal blockades and illegal occupation, we reviewed very, very carefully the tools at the disposal of the federal government. And we used all the tools that we had prior to the invocation of the Emergencies Act, and we determined that we needed some additional tools. Now, some of those tools, we will be putting forward measures to put those tools permanently in place. The authorities of FinTrack, I believe, do need to be expanded to cover crowdsourcing platforms and payment platform and their payment providers. So that is something that we need to do and we will do, and that needs to be in place permanently. Some of these other tools, like the sharing of information between law enforcement and financial services, and the requirement of financial services to be reviewing their accounts proactively, and the immunity from prosecution that we have provided to them in doing this. These are extraordinary measures, measures that we absolutely believe are necessary in the current circumstances, that are having an impact, and let me also point out, having a peaceful impact. And the other aspect of the financial tools that I would point to as being really effective and important is being clear that insurance on trucks that participate in these illegal occupations and blockades will be suspended. So we didn't have those tools. I don't believe that those tools should be part of the toolbox of a government in ordinary times, but they are necessary in these extraordinary circumstances, and they are having a very clear impact.
Doc, if I might add, individual citizens always have a right, if they've been damaged economically or physically, to go in front of the courts and using statutes, using common law principles to argue for compensation from the people that did the damage. And that's what they're doing here, and getting injunctions and that sort of thing. And those cases will be heard in the courts. As a government, we have to set general rules using criminal law and other administrative authorities that we have. We've done that. We have a criminal code, and we have added with the Emergencies Act, as Minister Freeland has pointed out, other powers that we did not have before in a similar space, but using a very different kind of tool to address that problem. And they are serious. We will obviously apply them in a balanced way in accordance with the Charter. Let me assure Canadians first that we will do that. But secondly, we'll always continue to look as a government, I as Minister of Justice, Minister Freeland as Minister of Finance, to look at these tools to see which ones are necessary going forward.
Thanks. And as a follow-up, perhaps this is for Minister Lametti. I mean, is going to court to get an injunction, this seems to have happened quite fast for these citizens, and their lawyer is saying that the government's moving too slowly to freeze accounts. Going to court to get an injunction to freeze accounts, was that not always a tool and still is a tool that the government could have used?
We can freeze accounts where we have evidence. We can try to get accounts frozen, especially under the powers we now have, where we have evidence that they were used for illegal activity, in this case, these blockades. The citizens who are going to court are going on a different basis, which is they have been economically damaged by the activities of somebody else. It's very, very different conceptually. We as a government are acting as we can, which is to create laws, and then letting the police apply those laws in our case, and financial institutions to cooperate with the police authorities as it goes forward. So it's a very different set of circumstances, and in general, applications for injunctions tend to move very quickly.
Merci. On va avoir une dernière question de Raphaël Pirot, l'agence QMI.
Oui, bonjour, est-ce que vous m'entendez?
Oui, on t'entend.
Donc, cette question est, je crois, peut-être pour M. Lametti ou Mme Freeland. Je veux savoir, tantôt, vous aviez dit que vous ne désirez pas que la loi soit étendue dans le temps. Est-ce qu'on s'en va vers un monde où, si la loi est utilisée à des fins préventives, où la loi, en fait, serait d'une certaine façon perpétuelle? Et quel indice, en fait, permettrait de dire, OK, ben là, on a vraiment fini avec les menaces?
Si je peux commencer, Raphaël, merci pour la question. La loi en soi est temporaire. Donc, la loi comme rédigée est temporaire, 30 jours. Oui, on peut le prolonger, mais avec un autre processus de justification et l'approbation du Parlement. Donc, ce n'est pas quelque chose qu'on pourrait faire facilement. Donc, la nature de la loi sur les mesures d'urgence est temporaire. On va l'employer d'une façon ciblée, mesurée, justement pour s'attaquer à certains problèmes particuliers. Et c'est ce qu'on est en train de faire. Une fois que ces conditions ne sont plus là, on va soit le révoquer, soit le laisser tomber après les 30 jours. Mais on voudrait, franchement, on voudrait s'en débarrasser aussitôt que possible.
Et je vais ajouter seulement deux choses. Je suis complètement d'accord avec le ministre Lametti que ces mesures d'urgence sont par sa nature ciblées, mesurées et c'est essentiel, temporaire. Concernant les mesures financières, j'ai parlé du FinTrack, du centre d'analyse, et je pense qu'on a compris que FinTrack, le centre d'analyse, a besoin des compétences plus grandes parce que le système financier a changé. Et FinTrack doit avoir les compétences qui incluent les plateformes de sociofinancement, crypto et crypto. Et on va agir pour faire ça.
Merci beaucoup, Mme Freeland. Justement, vous parlez des changements qui seraient permanents au système bancaire, donc qui donneraient plus de pouvoir pour geler des comptes. Je voulais juste être sûr, est-ce que éventuellement, s'il y a ces changements-là, peut-être que ce n'est pas pour geler des comptes nécessairement, mais il y a certaines modifications que vous voulez amener qui seraient permanentes, si j'ai bien compris.
Non, je pense...
Oui, non, en fait, c'est juste pour savoir si jamais il y a un changement de gouvernement, peu importe, est-ce que ça ne pourrait pas mener justement à certains abus?
Non, peut-être je n'ai pas bien expliqué. Les changements permanents duquel on parle concernent seulement les pouvoirs, les compétences du FinTrack, du centre d'analyse. Le système financier a changé. Le système financier inclut maintenant les plateformes de sociofinancement et le crypto. Et notre système institutionnel, le système de FinTrack, le centre d'analyse, doit avoir le pouvoir, comme elle a maintenant avec les institutions financières. On doit maintenant moderniser les pouvoirs du FinTrack pour inclure ces plateformes d'économie digitale. C'est seulement ce aspect-là dans lequel on doit vraiment moderniser notre système de supervision financière.
Parfait, merci beaucoup. Et merci au ministre d'avoir pu rester quelques minutes de plus. Donc, c'est ce qui met fin à la conférence de presse. This ends the press conference. Thank you again to the ministers who stayed a bit longer. So have a great day.
Merci, Catherine.
Merci, Catherine.